of all, I would like to welcome everybody here today. We have been preparing for this meeting. This is a meeting for the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study, and we're very happy to be here. And also, the meeting is being hosted by the state of Illinois, and they will be coming up in a few minutes to kind of welcome you and tell you a little bit about their mission and their program. I just wanted to show, these contact website, these QAR codes. You're able to click on those, and you're able to see our website for the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study, and also to you're able to see subscribe. You can subscribe to that website, which would allow you to get updates and that sort of thing. Again, welcome, and we're going to get started here. So let's go to the next slide, and I'll tell you a little bit about this. So one thing, for those not able to listen in today, we are recording this meeting, and we'll make it available on the study's website. And I'm just going to kind of recite the website. I know some people can go to that code, but it's www.lrd, which is Lakes Rivers Division, LRD, .usace, which is U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, USACE.Army.mil, M-I-L, /GLCRS, which is Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study. So if you go to that website. So again, this is really the first of many outreach and partnering opportunities that will occur over the next few years for this study as the study moves forward. And we'll tell you more about the opportunities for outreach and partnering and participation. What this is all about is we're studying how to enhance resiliency along our Great Lakes coast. That's a shared responsibility, and it requires that we all work together to respond to future changing conditions. And people are worried about the future changing conditions with climate change and that sort of thing. All we can really do is be proactive and try to plan for that. And that's what we're trying to do here. One thing I wanted to mention is that we're going to be responding to questions at a designated question and answer time. So I'm sorry if you have questions in the meantime while we're doing the presentation, if you would be so good as to hold to those questions. We actually have a way that you can enter those question ins by typing them in. We'll have a designated time to answer those questions, and plenty of time actually to do that. And then there's also a chat function, but that we kind of like to reserve the chat function for just introductions of who you are, maybe comments, but not questions. Anything that needs an answer should go in the questions module. And I'm actually going to introduce you to Dr. Akila Martin, who today is here to be a facilitator for this meeting, and she's going to tell you a little bit about those and other Zoom features. Akila?
Thanks, Mike. I'm glad you got us started on this. So, hey, everyone, I'm Dr. Akila Martin. You heard my voice a little while ago. I am serving as a facilitator for the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Shared Vision public meetings, along with my co-host, Madeline Dewey, who you will see posting in the chat. So please feel free to direct message myself, Akila Martin, and or Madeline Dewey if you want private commentary. As Mike said, on the screen, we have the Zoom features. We welcome you to the Zoom. We want to thank our Argonne National Laboratory, Laura Fox, who's on the call, that is supporting us with this platform, the use of this for our meeting. So thank you very much. So really quick, I wanted to go over the Zoom features. Hopefully you all are familiar with those so far. I see people are already writing in the chat. However, if you have a question, we really would appreciate you putting it in the question and answer functionality of Zoom so that it will not get lost in the chat. You can send an anonymous question. You can send it privately. That way, no one else will be able to see it, just us as co-hosts. If you have any comments or input and or feedback, please use the chat functionality, which is displayed by a call out, and it says chat. You can click on that. And then if you'd like to see a text version of what's being said orally today, click on the show captions button. It says CC, and you'll be able to see the text version of our oral comments. I'd also like to welcome Jose Burgos and Anaya Byers from the state of Illinois to discuss the Spanish and Polish version of our presentation today. So welcome, Jose, and welcome, Anaya. Anya, excuse me.
Thank you. So in my capacity of translator and interpreter today, I will be facilitating this presentation to Spanish speaking. So let's go ahead and acknowledge those. So buenos días a todas las personas que están presentes aquí esta mañana. Les queremos invitar a que si tienen alguna pregunta en español, si tienen algún tipo de inquietud que quieran comunicarnos durante el meeting, lo pueden hacer sin ningún problema. También, ya lo pueden ver, en el chat hay un link para la presentación en español. Si usted quiere seguir la presentación en español, lo puede hacer la misma que está en inglés en el chat, con el link, la puede ver en español. Y al final, si tiene preguntas, en el Q&A, en el Q&A, póngalas ahí, por favor, en español, y yo me encargaré de hacer el mejor trabajo posible para ayudarlo a entender lo que está ocurriendo. Así que muchas gracias de nuevo. Chat para el link a la presentación y Q&A o preguntas y respuestas al final. Thank you, Dr. Martin.
Thank you so much, Jose. And if you look in the chat, we posted the Spanish version of the slides as well as a link to the slides. So please take a look at that. And so I'll welcome Anya to the stage. Welcome, Anya.
Thank you so much. I will be facilitating the Polish translation for the question and answers. So let me switch over to Polish. Dzień dobry bardzo. Mam na imię Ania Bejers. Pracuję dla Stanowej Agencji Zasobów Naturalnych. Dzisiejsza prezentacja będzie w języku angielskim, ale slajdy PowerPoint są przetłumaczone na język polski i są dostępne pod linkiem podanym w okienku chat, a także można samemu podążać po polsku podczas prezentacji. Także będę dostępna podczas pytań, aby przetłumaczyć pytania z polskiego na angielski podczas czasu, który będzie dostępny w drugiej połowie spotkania i także, aby przetłumaczyć jakiekolwiek pytania i odpowiedzi na język polski przez opcję Q&A i przez opcję chat. Także jeżeli są jakieś pytania po polsku, proszę wysłać do mnie. Dziękuję bardzo. Thank you so much and I will hand this over to Dr. Martin.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Jose and Anya, for providing these services. We really appreciate this, and I'm sure the attendees also appreciate that. So now, if you do have questions, as we said, put in the Q&A. If you have comments, input, feedback, place in the chat. And I'll welcome Mike Padilla back to the stage, our esteemed project manager for our project. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Akila. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about the agenda for today. So, the purpose of this meeting is to provide all of you with a background and context for the study and kind of initiate our collaborative outreach program by bringing stakeholders like you to the table with our study team as we move forward. We're here today with the state of Illinois, who is cost-sharing this study, along with the other 7 Great Lakes states. You can see those states right there: Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, the 8 Great Lakes states. And Illinois is one of those, and they're cost sharing the study. As we go along, we'll introduce you to some of the key members of our project delivery team as we walk through some of the technical elements of the study and kind of explain some of those. After this briefing, we'll kind of looking for your direct feedback and input to help us move along, with the development of the shared vision part of this. That's really why we're here, is to get your input on the shared vision. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So the agenda is we're going to do a quick icebreaker here to talk a little bit about the Great Lakes, and then we're going to have some opening remarks from the state of Illinois folks and a presentation that will talk a little bit about their mission and their organization and their mission. Then the Corps of Engineers will come back and we'll talk a little bit about the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study. We'll tell you about the background and scope of the study. We'll talk about that shared vision statement that is important, and then we'll talk about some of the major study products, and we'll also talk about a basin-wide analysis and what we're doing, how we're analyzing the Great Lakes as a basin, and doing it in such a way that give us some insight to resiliency for the Great Lakes. Then we'll have a question and answer period, and we should have plenty of time for that. We will have time to answer all your questions, and then we're going to kind of go tell you about the next steps and then have some closing remarks. So thanks again for attending here. I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Martin, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about the conductance of this meeting. Akila.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. Hey, everyone. We wanted to share some meeting touchstones and shared expectations for all of us in this space, how we want to receive and engage each other while we're together during our next 2 hours. So I'll go over them one by one. Certainly, if you have any input or feedback, please place those in the chat. As we said, if you have questions, put it in the Q&A functionality of Zoom. So first of all, we want you to be 100% present, prepared, and extending and presuming welcome. We welcome you, we invite you, we encourage you to ask questions. We are at the ready to answer as best as we can. In order to limit distractions, please mute and turn off cell phones. Be aware of and allow for the difference between intention and impact as we go through our different presentations today. Listen deeply and always by invitation. We're always inviting you to ask us questions and give us feedback in the chat. Identify any assumptions, and then if you can, suspend any judgments that you may make. And then if you are allowed to come off mute, please respect the speaking time to 1.5 minutes so as to make sure that we have an opportunity for everyone to ask a question if necessary and to also be able to get a response if appropriate. At any time that we're together today, please speak your truth. And if things get difficult, turn to wonder, knowing that you are making a significant contribution. And we want to emphasize to expect non-closure because there may be questions and or comments that we cannot answer today. We may not be that far along in the study. So we just want to let you know that we are working diligently to make sure that we can get to those answers throughout the duration of this project. And finally, keep the meeting moving forward and focused on the meeting purpose. So we appreciate you. We welcome you. We encourage you to ask questions. And thank you so much for sharing space with us today. And I just want to reemphasize for like the 20th time that if you do have questions, please use the Zoom Q&A so that we can make sure that we have your question. As you can see, the chat is full of things, and so we want to make sure that your question doesn't get lost. And then if you have any feedback, any comments, any input, please use the chat functionality. And I also want to make sure that I say it again, that the Polish presentation link is in the chat, as well as the Spanish version of the presentation is in the chat. So click on those to follow along with us as we move through this program today. All right, Mike, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Akila. So wanted to tell you a little bit about resiliency when it comes to the Corps of Engineers. And so the Corps of Engineers has a water resource mission across the nation for civil works. And we also have it in the Great Lakes areas. And so we think a lot about resiliency because of our facilities such as dams and locks and things like that, and other facilities that are on the lakes. And so we thought a lot about it, and we actually define resilience as the ability to anticipate, prepare for, and adapt to changing conditions, and withstand, respond to, and recover rapidly from disruptions. And so we kind of have this cycle here about how we can deal with resiliency and our resilience principles. Prepare, absorb, recover, and adapt. So prepare is, be ready before, during, and immediately after a disruption, whatever type of disruption that is. It involves planning and training and putting protections in place, preparing for a disruption. Absorb, endure the disruption with minimal damage and without losing normal functionality. Recover, after an event, quickly recover functionality, maybe rebuild as part of recovering, rebuilding in ways that allow for less damage from similar events in the future. Adapt, make changes from lessons learned, so that we can reduce negative impacts in the future. So that cycle is kind of the way the Corps of Engineers looks at resiliency. And for our facilities and things like that. And we'd also like to get your take on resiliency. So we're going to do a little exercise here, and Dr. Martin will explain that to you. Akila?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike, for setting us up. So everyone, we want you to navigate to the Poll Everywhere site in order to capture your responses to the question as you see on your screen. What does coastal resiliency mean to you? Madeline has pasted the link in the chat, and I will read it aloud for those who may be on the phone. So there's 3 ways. You can scan the QR code for those who are quickly want to get there. So please scan the QR code on the screen. For those on the phone, the website is P as in Paul, O-L-L for poll, E-V, that's for everywhere, but they shorten it to Ev. So it's pollev.com. So POLLEV.com. And then / Choice Guru 975. And I'll spell that out. CHOICEGURU 975. So that's pollev.com / Choice Guru 975. And for those who may not want to use a laptop or desktop, you can use your phone to text a response. The number is 22333. I'll state the number one more time. 22333. And then you would text Choice Guru 975 and then your response. And that can be words, phrases, or statements or sentences. And so what I'll do now is to share my screen so you all can see the word cloud that we've developed, that you all have developed together, come alive. And if you haven't ever used a word cloud, the most frequent words that are input into the poll will show up larger, right? So as you can see now, conditions and coastal must be very frequent in the attendees' responses. Bounce is coming up, back, ability, conditions, so on and so forth. Thank you. It's beautiful. And I will leave this activated for the duration of this meeting today, so you can always come back to provide any more responses that you may have. You can do this multiple times, and we really appreciate your engagement with us on this activity. All right, this is beautiful. Thank you so much. All right, Mike, over to you. Mike, you
Sorry about that. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for that. And those words are very interesting. And you know, we get kind of common threads going through this as we engage with the public on you know, what is important to them for the you know, for this resiliency. Let's talk a little bit more about you know, coastal resilience and what it means to kind of study it. And to do that, we'll kind of look at this chart here. You know, the Corps of Engineers has been looking at this, and we, you know, the study team has been looking at this, and we kind of thought it would be useful to do the kind of who, what, when, where, why, and how of resiliency for the Great Lakes coast. You know, the who is, you know, the people that live along the lakes and the infrastructure, the habitats, the recreation, the creatures, the fish, all the things that live around there. That's what we're trying to. That's the who of this. You know, what do we need to do with resiliency? You know, the issues are variable water levels and ice conditions under a range of possible climate change scenarios. So we're concerned about climate change, and we're trying to be proactive, and we want to know what could happen. What are those possible climate change scenarios for water levels, you know, high and low, and ice conditions on the Great Lakes, because that has a lot to do with condition of the coast. You know, the wind, both short and long term. You know, we want to, you know, understand what's going to be happening in the short term, but obviously any sort of investments for the future have to be a long term. The where is very easy. The United States Great Lakes coast, and when I say United States, I mean the Great Lakes coast, that not including Canada. Because this is a U.S. government study, and We will, however, we are doing modeling when it comes to water levels and ice conditions and the range of possible climate change scenarios. We're doing modeling on that, and we're coordinating and are sharing that information, or will share that information with with Canada. As you can imagine, this study for resiliency is restricted to the United States side, but the modeling that we do, we will coordinate that and collaborate with Canada on. So I just wanted to make sure you understood that. Why are we doing this? That's really the important thing that we need your input on. Why are we doing this? What's out there that needs to be resilient? Economic things, environmental things, social things. These are the things that we need more information from the public on to make sure we know, why are we doing this? What is it that we're trying to accomplish in terms of resources out there? And then how, whatever we do, we want to come up with a plan that, promotes shared responsibility, so that, there's kind of a knowledge of people, all the people, that there's a shared responsibility to be resilient, identify a range of actions, and, potentially guide, investments for the future, so that the study that we do will inform these things and represent a guide to people moving forward. And that one with the star there, the why, it's really, we'll be updating that as we go, depending on feedback that we get from you all today. Next slide, please. Akila, so
yeah,
take it away.
I'm here. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mike. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. I want to welcome Lauren Wobig as well as Cody Eskew to the stage. Lauren will provide the State of Illinois opening remarks, and Cody Eskew will provide the State of Illinois presentation. So welcome, Lauren and Cody.
Thank you, Dr. Martin, and good morning, everybody. Lauren Wobig, I serve as the Director of the Office of Water Resources in the Illinois DNR that contains the coastal program here in Illinois. And so we're here to talk about coastal resiliency and all that happens on the Illinois coastline. And so if I could have my first slide, the obvious place to start is on the New Jersey shoreline. But we're talking about Jersey Mike's subs that began in New Jersey, where they served a sandwich called a submarine that was made Mike's way with vinegar and oil and spices. And if you can't already tell, that is my favorite sub. Next slide, please. And so Jersey Mike's was a popular, not Jersey Mike's, but Mike's Sub Shop was a popular sub shop in New Jersey. And a young man in the late 1960s by the name of Peter Cancrow started working there part-time. Well, now when Peter turned 17, Mike decided he'd made enough money off of selling very popular sub sandwiches that he decided to sell Mike's. This was kind of devastating for Peter, who loved working there because this was his part-time job. But Peter made a decision when he was 17 that he wanted to buy Mike's Sub Shop. His parents weren't so sure about all of that, but Mike went to his football coach, who knew Mike's character and knew what kind of an individual he was. And so Mike's football coach said, Pete's football coach said, not only will I give you a loan, but I will co-sign that loan for you. And so became Jersey Mike's. And then in the late 1980s, in 1987, Pete decided to franchise, and today there's over 2,400 Jersey Mike's across the nation. So why are we talking about Jersey Mike's for coastal resiliency? Next slide, please. Where I really want to go is of course, the number 13 is my favorite sub there, and it's got a lot of great ingredients, right? Ham and salami and pepperoni and meats that I can't pronounce. Traditionally, it has tomato, but on my subs there is no tomato whatsoever, right? I don't like tomato on my version of Jersey Mike subs. Next slide, please. And so just like there are many ingredients to a great sub sandwich, so are there many ingredients necessary to create sound coastal resiliency and the partnerships necessary to make that happen. Next slide, please. And so in our context today, obviously with the number 13 having, bread and cheese and meats and lettuce, and actually they put on a lot of lettuce and onions. Of course, you got to be careful when it comes to onions. And then of course I don't want tomato and then the other ingredients there. So in coastal resiliency, do we have many ingredients and components to that, right? From land rights and plans and specs and so on. And then many partners involved in what it's going to take to create sound coastal resiliency in Illinois, right? From communities to the state and federal agencies that we'll be dealing with, to contractors and organizations and foundations. And of course, then who's responsible for the ongoing operation and maintenance and the rehab of whatever it is that we create. So with Jersey Mike's, and thankfully it's not right before lunch yet, but with Jersey Mike's in mind and the ingredients it takes to make a great sub, we want to get into this resiliency study and knowing that the core in this effort is going to provide us in Illinois essentially these ingredients that we need to build our coastal resiliency, to build our sub sandwich, maybe without tomatoes, maybe with, we'll see. But that's where all of you come in, right? As the partners and those necessary to make that happen and what coastal resiliency becomes in Illinois. And so we're going to share some more about, Cody will share more about our coastal program and the coastal resiliency goals. But really what I want to leave as a message is that all of us become the owners of that coastal resiliency in Illinois. And so the Corps is going to give us a great product, if you will, and the ingredients for what that takes. But I need you to buy in as the owners and builders of that sub. And we're here to work with you, whether you're a community or a contractor or a foundation or an organization. It's going to take all of us to create the kind of coastal resiliency we want to achieve in Illinois. And so I just want to open that in with, to set the context of where we're going. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Cody Eskew to take it from there. Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren, for that easily digestible welcome and comparison. Sorry I had to do a bad pun following that. Thank you all for taking the time to join us today. I'm Cody Eskew. I'm a coastal specialist with the Illinois Department of Natural Resources Coastal Management Program. I would also like to call out a couple of my colleagues here on today's call. We have Meg Kelly, who is our director of our Coastal Management Program, and also Anya Bayers, who is our program manager. And I just want to take a few minutes to provide some background and context for the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study and for the Illinois Coastal Management Program. Next slide, please. So this study is a partnership between the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which represents the federal entity on this study, and all 8 Great Lakes states through their respective coastal management programs. So that includes Minnesota, Wisconsin, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, and of course, Illinois. So that's for a total of 9 partners, which is a really incredible feat to get that many states and the federal government to agree on something. So a lot of planning and work were necessary to get us to this point. Next slide, please. If you're not already familiar with us, you may be wondering just what the heck even is a coastal management program. So way back in 1972, Congress passed the Coastal Zone Management Act, which allowed each state and territory to establish a coastal zone management program. So every state integrates their program into the state government a little bit differently, but for Illinois, our program is located within the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, and we were established back in 2012. So these programs are federally funded by NOAA, or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And our mission is to protect and enhance the environmental, economic, and social value of Illinois' Great Lakes coastal region. And we accomplish this by providing technical assistance to communities. We provide pass-through funding to local organizations in the form of grants. And we also facilitate interagency coordination. Next slide, please. And our program has worked directly in and funded numerous projects in our short 12 years. But those projects generally fall into one of the program areas I have listed here. So those are coastal resiliency, habitat, water resources, recreation, and economic development. Next slide, please. And each coastal program operates in what's called a coastal zone, which is an area that's defined typically by the coastal watershed. So in Illinois' case, our coastal zone boundary is relatively narrow throughout due to the natural flow of water into Lake Michigan. And it's about 63 miles long, stretching from our state border with Indiana to the south to the border with Wisconsin to the north. Our shoreline is also very diverse in terms of landscape. We have a beach ridge dune system to the far north. We have a bluff and ravine complex, which is common in those North Shore communities. We also have the highly urbanized area of Chicago, and this also includes Lake Michigan itself. So all the work that our program does itself or work that we fund, it has to benefit some facet of the coastal zone that we've delineated here on this slide. And if you want to dive deeper just into where exactly our coastal zone is, we do have a nice interactable map on our website, which we can link. Next slide, please. And there are threats to our coastal zone, and the one most easily visible, especially in the past several years, are the lake levels. So on our ocean coasts, many people have heard of sea level rise, which is the slow rise of the ocean's water levels and how that threatens the coastal infrastructure as well as the habitat there. But here in the Great Lakes, it's a little bit different. So our water levels are constantly fluctuating due to a complex system of water inputs and outputs. We recently went from a historic low period of water level here in Lake Michigan to a near historic high level just in the span of about like 8 years or so, which was relatively quick. And this was about a 6-foot difference in water levels. So it's suspected that climate change has a hand in causing these two extremes. And we expect that extreme changes in water levels could become more frequent or the norm in the future due to climate change. And so that is really part of the impetus for the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study. We need to know which areas of our coast are the most vulnerable to rapid and extreme changes like this. Next slide, please. And these three images here, they just sort of visually demonstrate the impacts that the rapid and extreme changes in lake level have on our infrastructure and resources. So on the left, the first one, you can see flooding in the South Shore neighborhood of Chicago during a storm when the lake levels were high. You can also see in the middle picture a close-up look of beach damage, beach erosion at Rosewood Beach and Highland Park after some storm events. And then the right-hand image, there's a comparison between 2013 and 15, which it's an aerial view that shows the sort of complete disappearance of the beach face there at Illinois Beach State Park. So this is just after a couple of years of lakeshore rise. Next slide, please. So in addition to the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study, there are several other coastal resilience projects in the state being conducted either by us, our partners, or other agencies that I just want to highlight to avoid any sort of confusion between all these projects that are going on and the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study. I just want to note that we are coordinating with the Army Corps of Engineers so that they are aware of any existing state plans as the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study is being developed. So first, IDNR has a couple of resilience projects up at Illinois Beach State Park, and those are to protect over 2.2 miles of natural shoreline habitat up there. So these projects take the form of a combination of offshore and onshore breakwaters, and some of which are completely submerged. Then there are also two separate resilience plans that IDNR has provided funding for. The first one is the North Shore Coastal Resilience Plan. So this is just a regional resilience plan for those coastal communities north of Chicago. And the second resilience plan is for the South Shore neighborhood of Chicago. So both these plans, they involve working with the communities to assess current shoreline conditions, to explore interventions, and align funding opportunities to tee up resilience projects. Next slide, please. And then just a couple of other noteworthy resilience projects by other agencies are briefly described on this slide. So the first is the Chicago Shoreline General Reevaluation Study, which is a feasibility study to investigate Chicago coastal storm risk and recommend projects for implementation. And this study builds off an earlier 1996 Chicago Shoreline Project. And this is being done by the Army Corps of Engineers. The second one I want to mention here is the North Lakeshore Drive study, which is being conducted by IDOT and CDOT to enhance North Disabled Lakeshore Drive's infrastructure. Next slide, please. And so now that I briefly reviewed some of the major state level coastal resilience efforts, where does the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study fit in for us, and how does it benefit the state of Illinois and our local partners? So there's several main deliverables that Illinois will be receiving as outcomes of this study, which I briefly listed here. So the first is that the study will identify the areas most vulnerable to impacts from water level fluctuation to climate change. It will identify actions to address these risks and build resilience to the potential impacts. It will inform prioritization of management actions along the coast. And it will issue a decision-making guidebook, which we can use and share with our partners to replicate processes of the study at a local level. And with that covers my portion of this presentation. So that's all I have for you right now. But please feel free to reach out to me after today's discussion. I'll be here for the Q&A, and I'll also leave my email in the chat. So thank you for your time, and I guess I'll hand it back to Akila.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cody. Thank you so much, Lauren, for those great remarks. As we said, if you have questions, please place them in the Q&A.
Akila, you might be on mute.
I'm not on mute. Can you all hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. All right, good. Yeah, so thank you, Corey. Thank you, Lauren, for those great remarks from the state of Illinois. Thank you, everyone, for all the questions that are coming in. Please keep them coming. So I'd like to welcome back Mike Padilla as the project manager of the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study to discuss the study background. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Akila, and thanks, Lauren and Cody. Appreciate that point of view from the state of Illinois. Wanted to talk a little bit about the study itself. And so wanted to show this map here that you're looking at. So you can see the Great Lakes, obviously, with the 8 Great Lakes states. And then the Corps of Engineers has 3 districts on there. We have a water resource mission on the Great Lakes, Chicago District, Detroit District, and Buffalo District. You can see the color-coded maps there. And we have key missions when it comes to civil works, water resources, navigation, flood risk management, aquatic ecosystem restoration, emergency response. We also have regulatory duties on the lakes. And so, when it comes to resiliency, these missions, it's important to be resilient so that we can execute our missions effectively. And so, this is where this study came about. It was authorized by Congress in the Water Resources Development Act of 2018 and 2020. It got funded basically because the high lake levels that were causing so much problems there in 2020 timeframe. Basically, we were asked by Congress to kind of look at resiliency for the Great Lakes and to come back and make recommendations to them. And I'll tell you how we plan to do that. Remember the Great Lakes coasts. You're talking about 5,200 miles of coastline, and my understanding is that it's actually a greater coastline than the Atlantic and Pacific coast combined. So it's a huge area that we're looking into. And so, next slide, please. A little bit about the overall objective. So we're trying to protect the long-term economic, environmental, and social value of the Great Lakes through proactive planning. Again, this is all about being proactive. Not waiting for disastrous things to occur. Be proactive. We know that a lot of indication of climate change, and so we're looking into that. The estimated cost $14.4 million, and it's a 5-year study. It will be cost shared 75% by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and 25% by the 8 Great Lakes states. We started this study in July of 2023, and we're going to end in 5 years later in 2028. And so we developed a project management plan to kind of map this all out, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. These photos here are kind of after we went through a lot of deliberations on how to come up with a cost share agreement between us. We signed it and we're able to execute it. Next slide, please. The general scope is to do a vulnerability assessment, assess the coastal areas and see what's vulnerable to future flooding, erosion, and accretion. identify resilient actions. Are there things that we can do to address those vulnerabilities and improve resilience and adaptability of resources? And finally, come up with a plan. Identify strategic recommendations so that those recommendations will help the stakeholders, the states, the government to prioritize future investments to improve coastal resilience. Next slide, please. It's a collaborative approach. You can kind of see here, besides the Corps of Engineers that includes the three Great Lakes districts, Chicago, Detroit, and Buffalo, it's the 8 Great Lakes states, but it's also the tribal nations. We've been taking a good care to coordinate and try to collaborate with the tribal nations. We met with them several times and have presented the study to them and asked them for their input. Also, we've been coordinating with other federal agencies, state and local agencies, to make sure that they know what we're up to. There's a lot of work going on out there regarding resiliency and regarding resiliency on the Great Lakes, and so we wanted to make sure that they were aware of what we're trying to do, so we can coordinate that work and leverage work that's already been done, that sort of thing. And then collaboration with those that live, work, and recreate on the Great Lakes is very important. And so we really appreciate you being here today and helping us to do this work. Next slide, please. See, these are some of the questions that people have. Climate change is something that may affect many communities on the Great Lakes, and this study is kind of the first step towards that. Here's some of the questions that people have when they see climate change occurring. My favorite beach is underwater. What do I do? How is tourism going to be affected in my town? Tourism is very, very important to the Great Lakes states. What about fish habitat? Fisheries is a huge industry on the Great Lakes. Flooding, everybody is concerned. In 2020, in those years around that time, there was high lake levels and there was lots of flooding that occurred. When there's low lake levels, you have boats that bottom out. Maybe recreational crafts can't get into places that they're normally used to getting into. And then the shipping industry, the Great Lakes is huge, has a huge shipping industry. And sometimes when the lake levels are too low, vessels might have to light load, where they can't carry as much as they normally could, and that just increases shipping costs. And there's lots of other effects that we're actually reaching out to you to help us understand those effects. But these are kind of the things that we're trying to address, these sort of questions. Next slide, please. This study is actually referred to as a Section 729 watershed study. Watershed studies were authorized by Congress because they saw the value of not studying really very specific things. Sometimes you lose track of the big picture. And so if you look at an entire watershed, of which the Great Lakes is a watershed, you can zero in on problems and things like that from a more holistic and big picture standpoint. A watershed assessment, that's what this study, Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study, is. One of the things that we're going to do is to document a shared watershed vision. Now, when it comes to a watershed vision, that's one of the things that we're trying to accomplish today. And when a group of people has a common objective, it's very useful and almost critical to establish a shared vision for what are we shooting for here? What are we hoping to accomplish? What do we want the future to look like after we've done our work? The vision of the future after we've done our work, that's a better place because of the work that we've done. A shared vision, it supplies a strategic plan for success, and it provides, kind of a guide for challenges along the way. If you have a shared vision of all the people that are working together, then when a conflict occurs, you can kind of turn to that vision to try to give you some guidelines. It's like a compass. And so this study here has 3 main milestones, and I'll just talk a little bit about the timeline here. The first thing we did was signed a cost share agreement because the study costs money and we had to make sure we had a way to fund it. After we did that, we immediately developed a project management plan, a PMP. And that project management plan is available to the public. Keep in mind that it's kind of a roadmap. It's only updated on annual basis. And so if you ask for the PMP today, it's from about 9 months ago, and will be updated in about 3 months. So you might want to wait for 3 months before that updated PMP. But the next milestone, the first milestone actually, is the shared vision milestone. And again, that's why we're here today, to get your input into that and to set that forth. And we're going to have an exercise here where you can actually help us with the shared vision milestone. After we do the shared vision, and actually currently we're working on other things, other parts of the study, we're doing an analysis, that watershed assessment and analysis of what are all the resources out there, get a handle on what all resources are out there, which is quite a few. And what are the potential vulnerabilities to them. Once we've gone through that analysis, we'll have a recommendations milestone, and there'll be draft recommendations, because we'll actually ask the public and stakeholders and our partners to tell us what they think about the work we've done for those recommendations. And then our last milestone is a report and other products that we alluded to earlier today. A report that can be used to make decisions on investments and things like that, and other products that will be used, that can be used by the public and other stakeholders and our partners. Next slide, please. And so I wanted to just tell everybody this timeline includes engagement, and we've got several types of engagement coded here. The public coordination is shown in blue there. And right now we're at the shared vision meeting for the state of Illinois. We actually have 9 meetings for shared vision that we're conducting. And then we'll be doing study progress briefings, where we'll invite the public to be, so that we can brief them on how this, what we're doing in the study and how we're doing, and some of the results that we have. And then we'll have a basin-wide analysis. I mentioned the basin-wide analysis, obliquely there. It's again doing that assessment of what resources are out there that we need to think about, and what are their vulnerabilities. Once we've done that basin-wide analysis, we're going to present some of that to you, and we'll talk more about the basin-wide analysis today. And then again, we'll have study progress briefings that you'll be able to be engaged with on the study as we go forward into 2026. And then we'll have our draft recommendations. We will submit that to the public and stakeholders and our partners. And there'll be an 8-week public review period for people to look at that and give us comments and things like that. And then as we go into 2027 and 28, we'll have more study progress briefings to take us past the draft recommendations milestone. And then the project will be complete in October of 2028. So that's plenty of time for you guys to be involved. And the best way to do it is, you can see at the bottom of the screen there on the left-hand side, that QAR code. We already talked about our website, but if you go to our website, you can subscribe. And when you do that, you will be receiving all the information that we disseminate as we go through these 5 years of the study. You'll be receiving email blasts and study updates and announcements of future public engagements. So that's the best way to keep apprised of the study. And so I hope that you'll subscribe. Next slide, please. We're going to go on and talk a little bit about the shared vision. And with that, Akila will take over and guide us through this exercise. Akila.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. Hey, everyone, welcome. I would like to welcome Kara Patello, who is an illustrious, amazingly creative planner at the Chicago District, to discuss the shared vision statement development. And so welcome, Kara.
Thank you so much. All right. So to get into the shared vision, which is kind of the purpose of this meeting that we're having here today, Mike talked earlier about how our goal of building resiliency throughout the Great Lakes is really a collective effort. So it's one that's going to require a lot of commitment and dedication to make this happen over the long term. And so we're here today to talk about our shared vision statement, because this is going to be our guiding principle as we move through the various stages of the resiliency study over the next 5 years. So we're hoping to develop a long-term kind of guiding principle statement that will ensure that everyone involved in the study is aligned around that common purpose over the course of the study. But when we're talking about our shared vision statement, we don't want to develop one that just resonates with our study team and is just applicable to our study. We want to think of something bigger than just the study. So we're really excited to have all of you here with us today in this meeting to help give us some feedback on the statements that our team has drafted, so that we can make sure that this vision statement really resonates with everyone who cares about the Great Lakes. So I'm just going to talk quickly about how we got to where we are with our shared vision statements and how we developed the 3 draft statements that I'm going to be sharing in just a second. But it started back in the summer and the fall, actually, of this past year, where the resiliency study team, and that consists of the Army Corps of Engineers teammates, as well as our 8 Great Lakes state partners, we got together and we had some workshops where we started to brainstorm what makes the Great Lakes important to us, but also to all those that live, work, and recreate along the coast. And we also extended this conversation to tribal nations during the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the BIA's Midwest Region Partner in Action Conference last fall, and we got some feedback from tribal nations as well. And we compiled all of this feedback that you can see here on the screen, some of the feedback that we got. It was really great from fresh water. We have fishing, clean water, commerce, beaches, tourism, habitats, ecosystems. And so we started to look at all this feedback that we got and synthesize it, and it just really became clear to us, how important the Great Lakes are. They're a really irreplaceable resource to many of us that live along the coast. It's a way of life. They're really culturally significant and something that we want to ensure is resilient. So here are some of the themes that we kind of pulled from the feedback. You can see these 4 different columns titled at the top in blue. So we have resources, we have recreational opportunities, the natural environment, as well as the intrinsic and cultural value of the Great Lakes. And so our team took this feedback, we really thought about it, and we also started to think about what makes a strong vision statement. We want it to be memorable, we want it to be kind of catchy, it's going to be guiding us over the next 5 years. So when we started to think about popular catchy slogans, we kind of want our statement to be similar to that. So simple is better. We want it to be memorable, resonating with all of us and having a really clear interpretation. So I'm going to share the 3 vision statement drafts that we kind of put together based on that feedback that we got. But please keep in mind that these are just drafts. So we're hosting a series of shared vision meetings to get feedback from you and everyone throughout the Great Lakes coast. And we're going to take that feedback as a team. We're going to take all this feedback and we're going to think about it, and we're going to use it to revise our final shared vision statement. So I'm going to share with you the 3 statements that our team has drafted, and we're going to ask for some feedback. So our first statement is that our vision for the Great Lakes coast is to improve and protect their ecosystems, recreational opportunities, cultural significance, communities, and economies to be resilient for present and future generations. Our first one, and then our second statement is to support, strengthen, and protect their natural resources, recreational opportunities, communities, economies, and quality of life for current and future generations. And our third statement is to ensure a resilient and sustainable future for vibrant coastal communities, abundant natural and cultural resources, and thriving economic assets. And so these 3 statements, they're kind of similar, but we really want to hear if there's certain parts of them that you like more than the other. If you really like one, we would love for you to share that feedback in the chat if you have any thoughts. And then if these statements don't capture your vision for a resilient Great Lakes coast, we'd love to hear why. So if you think there's something important that we haven't included, if you have any suggestions for improvement, I'm going to pause here. I know it's a lot to think about, so I'll give you a couple minutes to read through them a few times. And then if you have any thoughts about whether these statements capture your vision for a resilient Great Lakes coast, and if not, we would love to hear that in the chat. And if you would prefer to submit your feedback a little bit more anonymously, you are welcome to send a private message to either Akila or to Madeline, and they will read that feedback aloud to the group if you would prefer to not put it in the chat. So I'll pause here, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts. right, I see the feedback starting to come in the chat. Really appreciate your thoughts. And like I said, we're not making any revisions today, but the team is going to compile all the feedback that we get over the course of this meeting series, and we'll take it back and incorporate it into our final shared vision statement that we come up with. All right, a couple more thoughts coming through in the chat. Again, really appreciate anything you have to share with us. And again, if you would prefer to submit it more anonymously, you can always send a direct message to Akila or Madeline, and they'll read it aloud for everyone anonymously. All right, thank you all so much for everything that you've shared in the chat so far. If anything else comes to mind during the meeting, please feel free to put it in the chat and we'll document it and take it back as we revise our shared vision statement. So if anything comes to mind throughout the rest of the meeting, please feel free to share that with us. But we'll move on to our second shared vision exercise, which is a website that our team has developed to let you share which vision statement you like the best. And so we'll use this information kind of in combination with the other feedback that we've gotten through the chat to help us revise that final shared vision statement. So if you go to the website that's listed here at the bottom of the page, which is glcrs.evs.anl.gov/shared vision, it will take you to a website that looks similar to this image here. And so that website has our 3 shared vision statements options listed on it, and it has a box next to each one where you can enter 1 for your top choice. So tell us what your favorite of the 3 statements was, 2 for your second choice, and then 3 for your third choice. And we are asking that you please only submit 1 response to make sure that everyone's voice is heard equally. Another thing to note is that this website is going to be open for the duration of the meeting, so you have the whole 2.5 hours to think about it and kind of digest the feedback that you've seen coming in through the chat and submit your response. But the website is only live during the meeting period. So again, for that 2.5 hour time that we have set aside for the meeting, that's when the website is live. But we are hosting a total of 9 public meetings. I think there's either 4 or 5, 3, 4 after this. So if there's a couple more. If you need more time to think about it, here is the meeting schedule actually on the next slide. So after today, we'll have 1 this afternoon, and then we'll have for Michigan, and then next week we'll have New York and Wisconsin, and then we're also hosting an after hours meeting. So if it's easier for you or someone you know to join outside of work hours, that one will be on Tuesday of next week. And you are more than welcome to think about it and come back if you have additional feedback. You can come back to one of those future meetings and share your thoughts with us. Or if you have someone you know, a colleague, a friend, a neighbor that you think wants to be involved in developing the shared vision statement as well and has feedback that they'd like to share with us, we encourage you to invite them to attend one of the remaining meetings. And our full schedule, as well as the link to join those meetings, is on the website. So we really thank you for all the feedback that you shared, and again, encourage you to share more if it comes to mind. And really thank you for being here today and being a part of our shared vision statement development.
Thank you so much, Kara. And I'm so excited. You all are the best state so far with all the great engagement on the shared vision statements. We really love that engagement. Thank you so much. And so I'd like to welcome our fearless leader, Jana Potoff, who's also a lead planner at the Chicago District, to discuss the major study task. Welcome, Jana.
Oh my God. Oh, here it is.
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Hi, hello everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Martin. Really happy that we had so much participation, and thank you. So the next slides we're going to be sharing are slides that identify all our major study tasks and how those study tasks will result in study recommendations. So the Corps of Engineers has recently completed 2 large-scale watershed studies, and this one of them being the South Atlantic Coastal Study. Some of the visual aids that we're going to be sharing in this presentation here are from that, to give everyone an idea of what to expect and what the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency deliverables will be. And throughout this part of the presentation, we're going to build a flow chart on how all those different study tasks end up with recommendations and a strategy for resiliency, the big picture that Mike had mentioned. To understand vulnerabilities, Cody touched on it, so did Mike, or to build resiliency, you have to understand your vulnerabilities. And so this study is informed by climate scenario modeling that is being funded outside of this study, but through the GLRI, Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, but US EPA. So the objective, the question that we were funded to answer for the EPA was, what are the expected range of future Great Lakes water levels and ice conditions and wave heights under different climate scenarios? And so a very multi-agency team has been working together, people from the Corps of Engineers, our Engineer Research and Development Center, NOAA's Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory, USGS Woods Hole, as well as each of the 3 Great Lakes districts, the Corps of Engineers Great Lakes districts, Buffalo, Chicago, and Detroit, and then Cornell University and University of Michigan. Throughout the development of this, of our modeling exercise, we've held quarterly stakeholder meetings. And our modeling, we have not yet released results. We're still working on them. But another reason to subscribe to this website is once those results are, publicly available and posted on this project's the Framework for Resilient GLRI Investments website to be developed, we will be blasting out an email to all of the watershed study subscribers about where to find this information and when the date where we're going to be releasing it with a meeting. So the next slide, if we go back to our flow chart, is so the climate scenario modeling, not funded through this project, a separate effort, that is going to inform the big picture, like Mike had said, the big picture GIS analysis of where there are anticipated vulnerabilities under different climate scenarios. And so we'll be looking at high water results from those scenarios as well as low water. And that information will be publicly available through a GIS web portal. And once again, it'll be linked through our website. Subscribers will find out when the results of this analysis is going to be posted. And so this basin-wide big picture analysis uses basin-wide data sets, not state-specific data sets, basin-wide, so we can look at the whole basin, the Great Lakes, the US side of the Great Lakes Basin, and understand where there are potential vulnerabilities. This product is going to be very user-friendly, so all of the public can use it to look at particular areas that they're interested in along the Great Lakes coast, and we're really excited about this. It was very well received by the SACs. All of those. This is a picture of the South Atlantic Coastal Studies GeoPortal, and it was very well received by the public and those who live and recreate and manage coastal resources down at the South Atlantic South Atlantic portion of our country. So we'll have the results of that basin-wide analysis, and then Cody had that beautiful, graphic of there were some recent highs and some recent lows, and understanding the vulnerabilities that happened during those recent highs and recent lows, as well as being informed by this big picture GIS analysis. The states and the Corps will select focused evaluation areas, and those focused evaluation areas, we will be hosting workshops. And those workshops, the goal of those workshops is to take this big picture analysis, GIS, and then focus it down into site-specific areas where more detailed analysis will be done. And one of the questions that we'll be asking during these workshops is, what keeps you up at night about managing your coastal resource? Is it a low water condition? Is it a high water condition? And then what are the potential consequences? In Illinois, they are going to be hosting 2 workshops, and at those workshops we'll be discussing up to 10 coastal resources. The Corps will be picking some, and the state of Illinois will be picking some at those 2 workshops. The results of those workshops is to understand, how climate could impact those resources, and to develop strategic recommendations, a strategy to address resiliency in Illinois. This is the Illinois Forum, and so we'll be using not only the basin-wide analysis, but also the results of the focused evaluations to inform what those recommendations are. And these recommendations are future study, future action that can be completed not only by the Corps, not only by the state of Illinois, but for local agencies, not NGOs, and other organizations. So other federal agencies. One of the first meetings that we held during this shared visioning exercise was with other federal agencies that have missions regarding coastal resources, and so we've met with them, and the goal of all of that information and study is to put together this big picture of what are the next steps, what needs to happen for us us coastal communities, states, federal agencies to be ready for anticipated climate change, potential climate change impacts. And so you'll see on this list that this is once again a snip from the South Atlantic Coastal Studies recommendation page, but it's a mixture of different agencies, near-term actions, longer-term actions, and then identifies, what are some next steps that need to occur to basically make this recommendation happen. And so we'll have our big GIS analysis. We'll have up to 140 sites along 5,000 miles of shoreline, but that's not a whole lot when you're probably thinking we have 5,000 miles of shoreline. And so in addition to the GIS analysis, the results of the focused evaluations, one of our work products will be to share with the public through a PDF document steps on what does the public, other federal agencies, communities need to consider when they are thinking of coastal resiliency in their areas. Buffalo has created this risk-based framework for resilient shorelines a while ago. We will be updating that to include the climate perspective. In addition to this document, we will also create a web map, a geoportal of sorts, where you walk through the different steps and thought processes at a higher level regarding what should resource managers, the public, be thinking of, and the steps needed to be taken regarding coastal resiliency. One thing that I didn't mention that I want to highlight is that GIS analysis, in addition to, looking at areas that are vulnerable, we also hope that people will use that to inform new projects, the location of new projects, because you'll have a better idea of where high water or low water might be to inform, the location of future projects. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Donna, for that great presentation. I'd like to welcome back Kara Patello to discuss the basin-wide analysis. Welcome, Kara.
All right, thank you so much. So right now I'm going to share a little bit of the work that we have started on the first major deliverable of the study that Donna just kind of gave us an overview of. To reorient you on our flow chart here, we're talking about the basin-wide analysis. So to get into some of the details, again, just the objective of this analysis is this is our major first step in the study. And here we're trying to understand, like Donna and Mike have kind of highlighted, that we're looking to understand that big picture of how the changing lake levels due to climate change could possibly impact our coastal communities, infrastructure, and the environment. And so like Donna said, the first step of resilience is really understanding where those important resources could possibly be at risk to the hazards. And so this first step is going to help us identify the areas around the Great Lakes that we, and when I say we, I'm talking about the federal government, tribal nations, as well as our state partners, other federal agencies, and local communities might want to look in more detail. So if we see some really important resources that could possibly be at risk, that might warrant a future study that will have a more detailed analysis to kind of better understand how these resources are exposed and at risk. And so since we're talking about the big picture with the basin-wide analysis, just want to reiterate that we're sticking to data sets that cover the entire study area. And this is really important to ensure that we're doing a consistent analysis across the board, so we're getting that apples to apples picture when we're thinking about climate change in the Great Lakes and changing water levels, and we're getting that big picture view that we're really looking for early in the study. So to do that, to find those basin-wide data sets, we met with our team across the 3 USACE districts, so Buffalo, Chicago, and Detroit. We met with engineers, planners, scientists, and cultural resource experts to help us identify coastal resources that we thought were really important to include in the study and to include in the basin-wide analysis. But we also worked really closely with our state partners on this. Each of the states brings their own unique perspective and insights to the table, and our state partners also do a really great job at kind of representing and advocating what the folks in their states care about. So together we identified over 100 different coastal resource layers that we wanted to include in our analysis. And we took that inventory and we split it into 3 different categories of resources. So you can see here we have social vulnerability and environmental burdens. We have a category for environmental and historic resources. And then our third kind of broad bucket that we're talking about is population and infrastructure resources. And we have a 4th one listed here, and that's all of these resources combined. So we'll have a separate index, a separate view of each of these different categories, and then we'll also have a 4th that looks at all of them together. And then once we have these different indexes developed, we will be combining them with the hazards. And so in this study and in this analysis, the hazards that we're looking at are going to be the high and the low water levels under the range of possible climate scenarios that Jana had talked about earlier, coming from that separate modeling effort. We'll be using those results to feed into our study to help us understand how lake levels could change and how these resources could be exposed to the high and the low water hazard in the future. So we will kind of be overlaying those hazards with where the resources are, and that will give us an understanding of where these important resources exist and where they could be impacted by changing highs and lows in the lakes. And so to go into some more detail about those, the resources that we've inventoried to build out our indexes, the first one I'm going to talk about is social vulnerability and environmental burdens. And so when we're talking about building resiliency along the coast, it's really important that we're recognizing that there are individuals and communities that are exposed to environmental burdens or may be socially vulnerable, and these individuals and communities are could possibly experience a disproportionate effect of the hazards. And so to incorporate this into our analysis, we're using a data source that's called the Environmental Justice Index, or the EJI. And that data source was developed by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC. And so the EJI includes over 36 different indicators or metrics that they have used to build out their own index, and it helps to identify areas that could be considered highly burdened. And so in their metrics, they include different indicators, and you can see that they have these 3 kind of buckets that they've split their index into. So the first category is environmental burdens, and that includes things like air pollution, water pollution. And the second one is social vulnerability, so things like racial and ethnic minority status, socioeconomic status, different data and metrics for those. And then their third category that they look at and include is data for pre-existing chronic disease burden. And so all of that is combined together to give us this kind of understanding of where along the Great Lakes there are communities or individuals that might be experiencing a higher level of environmental justice concerns or social vulnerability concerns. And so we'll be including that in our analysis. And then in addition to that, to respect tribal sovereignty and self-government and to fulfill federal trust and treaty responsibilities to tribal nations, we are going to be including the land within the boundaries of federally recognized tribes as being socially vulnerable in our index. And for that, we will be using the U.S. Census Bureau's tribal census tract. So that is the data that will be building out our social vulnerability and environmental burdens index. And then our second category of important resources to look at their exposure along the lakes is environmental and historic resources. So for this index, we're using protected and managed area GIS data. So that includes things like national and state parks, lake shores, the National Register of Historic Places, important bird areas, marine protected areas, and other areas that are conserved, protected, and managed. So that we have GIS data for. And then in addition to that, we're incorporating GIS data for different types of habitats that are located along the coast. So we have wetlands, grasslands, beaches and dunes are really important, spawning locations for fish, forests, so that is all being incorporated as well. And then we are also working closely with the tribal nations. We've been meeting with them over the past several months and coordinating with them on the data that we've been able to source on our own for important tribal resources. And so we've shared what we've inventoried with them as well. And we have asked if there's any GIS data that they have that they want to share with us to incorporate into the study so that we can do the best job that we can at representing the significance of these environmental and historic resources to the tribes as well. But with that, we also have to acknowledge that the type of analysis that we're doing here has some limitations. So there might be important resources to the tribes that there is no existing GIS data. And so because of that, it won't accurately be represented in this analysis. So we're acknowledging that there are some shortcomings and limitations to this type of analysis, but we are coordinating with them to try and do the best job that we can at representing these resources in the analysis. And our last category or index that we're going to be building out is population and infrastructure. So this has, the 4 components you can see here on the left. The first being critical infrastructure. So for that, we're looking at the Department of Homeland Security's different critical infrastructure sectors. And so you can think things like water treatment facilities, power plants, dams, roads, those types of infrastructure we will have GIS data for, and that will be incorporated into our analysis. We are also including community resources. Those are really important as well. So things like schools, parks, or other important local economic assets. And then again, coordinating with the tribes, and we will also be incorporating population data into our analysis as well. So that was just really a high-level introduction to the basin-wide analysis. Like I said, we're early stages in not only this analysis, but just the study overall. But we wanted to share some of the progress that we have made and some of the work that we've been doing just to give you an understanding of the types of resources that we'll be looking at in the analysis. We're planning to host a public meeting in the fall of 2024, so the fall of this year, where we'll have more to share about the basin-wide analysis details. So we hope that you can attend that. And then in the summer of 2025 is when we are planning to share the results of this analysis. So we really hope that you can continue to stay involved and stay tuned for more on the basin-wide analysis.
Oh, thank you so much, Kara, for that great presentation. Thank you, everyone from the state of Illinois and the Army Corps of Engineers Chicago District presentations. We really appreciate you sharing all the work and great efforts that you all are expending. And so now we've arrived at the question and answer part of our session today. There are some questions that I see people have been posting. Thank you so much. If there are others, please keep them coming. We are ready to answer those. And so you should be able to see some of the answers that we've already typed out in the question and answer functionality of Zoom. So please open that up so you can see some of the questions that some of the attendees have posted and that some that the state of Illinois and Army Corps of Engineers has already responded to. If there's a moment of clarity that you need, please enter another question whenever you're ready. All right, so I'll go with the first question. Jonna, I'm pitching this to you. Let me know if you're ready. All right, so in definition, is it just physical conditions or are chemical and biodiversity included?
Okay, so for the basin-wide analysis, it is a inundation analysis. So where is the water touching coastal resources, or where is the low water extent because of the climate scenarios? So that is just a physical condition. In that basin-wide analysis, though, you saw just Kara's presentation, there are a variety of habitat layers like the habitat of T&E species, wetlands, forests. And so with that basin-wide analysis, people can begin to understand, what, if anything, would biodiversity be impacted by these changing water levels. And our analysis does not include a chemical analysis.
All right, thanks so much, Jonna. And Wayne, if you need any more clarification, you can please type another question in the question and answer session. Section, not session. All right, thanks so much, Jonna. So I'll pitch this one over to the state of Illinois because this is specifically saying, why aren't the Illinois State Archaeological Survey and SHPO major players in this? Illinois CMP has shown no concern about identifying and protecting archaeological sites.
This is Lauren. I'm happy to answer that one. I would say, certainly the SHPO is part of the DNR along with the coastal program. So we are in kind of constant communication with them on all matters. But when it comes to actually engaging like with with SHPO on that. What they typically, we have to have a defined project or a defined action that they would like to discuss. So we can't just go to SHPO and say, well, we're thinking of doing some general kind of resiliency improvements between point A and point B. We actually have to go to them with some specifics of, well, we're proposing this kind of an activity or this kind of a modification here before they would engage and then say, okay, in that case, then we have this concern or that concern, or this needs to be remediated or addressed. So it certainly is part of the project that we get into each time with SHPO, and it's obviously a consideration, but it really is kind of a project activity or proposal by proposal consideration. Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate that response. And so I will pitch this to anyone from, say, Illinois and or USACE to respond to. Oh, well. So Kara, please respond to this one. Thank you. Who are the tribal nations that were involved?
Yep, so we have been reaching out and coordinating with over 70 different federally recognized tribes that are either resident tribes or they have treaty rights or connections to the Great Lakes. And so we have been coordinating with those tribes over, I think we've had 5 meetings over the past couple of months. So I don't know off the top of my head which exactly tribes have attended, but we have been coordinating with over 70 different tribes that have connections to the Great Lakes.
Thanks, Kara. So the question I was trying to pitch earlier, it looks like it was answered by a typed answer by Cody. So thank you, Cody. So just ensure that everyone can see that, because this is a really good question about how we can be more engaged in doing any citizen science effort. So please check out that response. All right, so maybe Kara and or State Illinois, why doesn't the basin-wide analysis include GIS information for archaeological sites?
Sure. So we do have some GIS data that includes information about historic sites. I'm not sure if you have a specific one in mind that you're thinking of, but we are, like we said earlier, kind of limiting our analysis to using basin-wide data sets. So if it's a state-specific data source, we're not using that in this stage of the analysis, just because we want to make sure we're having that consistent view of the entire Great Lakes Basin. But if you have a basin-wide GIS data set in mind, we would love for you to share that with us, and we can kind of include it in our inventory and see if we can include it in the study. But that we are using the National Register of Historic Places, and if you have, again, an additional data source that meets the criteria for use in the analysis, we would love for you to share it with us.
Thanks, Kara. I appreciate that response. And for those who feel like they need more clarity after the answers have been responded to, please feel free to retype a question and or ask for clarity. All right, I have one more question that we have in a Q&A, and this is for Jana. How is the basin-wide analysis considering dynamic natural processes? For example, sediment transport that impact in addition to more static data?
The basin-wide analysis is not considering dynamic natural processes. It is an inundation as well as a low water extent analysis. But with that, in our focused evaluations, we can conduct qualitative, not quantitative modeling, but qualitative erosion analysis based on the changing water levels and wave conditions, because the modeling will provide us that. And any site-specific erosion analysis would have to be completed out as a spin-off of this study or one of those study recommendations. Thank you.
Yes, very nice. Thank you, Jana. I'm not seeing any more questions in the Q&A. Madeline, I'll pitch it to you to let me know if you've received any direct message questions and or comments you'd like to share at this time. Welcome, Madeline.
Oh,
Hi.
I just wanted to kind of build on my earlier response about the archaeological data. So I see in the chat someone said they're protected from public dissemination. And so we are also using only publicly accessible data because our results will be shared with the public on this geoportal that we're developing, as well as the documentation of all of the analysis. So we're only using basin-wide publicly accessible data. So that might be kind of exclude some of this additional data from being included for that reason.
Thank you for that clarification, Kara. Thank you so much. All right, Madeline.
Yeah, thanks folks for bearing with me, and with all the links and resources being shared in the chat there, I'm not seeing any direct messages. You feel free to if you'd like me to ask a question anonymously. But I did just want to also hit on a response about the modeling and the hydrodynamic processes that Jana just answered. And there is a response from Akila in the chat that the modeling will produce those static water levels, and water levels will include wave and surge, and that will be publicly released. So while it's not going to include sediment transport, it will include some wave information. So I just wanted to kind of re-emphasize that. But otherwise, nope, not seeing anything directly to me, but feel free to. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Madeline. And I'm not seeing any questions. I'll hold for about 7 to 10 seconds to see if people are still trying to gather their thoughts. Also be mindful that we do have an email for USACE, for the Army Corps of Engineers, as well as Cody has placed an email address in the chat if you have further questions that may come up down the line. We also invite you, as Kara said early, to come back to visit us later today for another shared vision meeting, and we have 2 more, I believe, no, 3 more next week, Monday and Tuesday. So feel free to come back as often as you like and ask the questions as often as you like. We really appreciate that, your participation. All right, well, so now I'd like to invite John Paggio, who is working with us at the Chicago District, to discuss the next steps. And I'd also like to say thank you so much, everyone, for such great energy, for such engagement and participation. We really appreciate that. That is the way to go, to be a part of these meetings and to make sure you stay up to date on what's happening with this study. All right, welcome, John. Thank you.
Thanks, Akila. So it sounds like from the earlier comments and questions that there's a lot of willingness to stay involved in our study, which is great to hear, because when the study was being scoped, we wanted to have a local community focus. It's why we reached out to the state's coastal management programs to be our partners in the study, and it's why we're inviting you all today to share your feedback on our shared vision statement. To maintain this local community focus, we included 5 regular study update progress briefings for the public throughout the 5 years of our study. There's 5 of them. We are currently in the second quarter of calendar year 2024. This is the 5th of the 9 public shared vision meetings. 8 are hosted by our state partners who are cost share partners in the study. And there's 1 after hours meeting hosted by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Next year, we will be presenting the basin-wide analysis results in 5 public meetings, 1 for every lake. And in late summer 2027, we'll have public meetings for the draft recommendations, followed by an 8-week public review period. So this is a lot of public engagement opportunities to keep track of over a long period of time. But the best way to stay informed with our study is to subscribe to our mailing list, where we will send out periodic updates and notifications about future meetings and website updates to our subscribers. We also have a website that has more information about the study, including the schedule of the remaining shared vision meetings. And once we finalize the shared vision statement, we will post it on the website and alert subscribers on the mailing list. We will also alert subscribers when the results of the modeling is publicly available, and we look forward to seeing you all again in our future public engagement meetings.
Thank you so much, John. I want to take a moment to invite Jose and or Anya to, were there any things that you needed to state to anyone that you may have received direct messages? Pardon for not asking that earlier, but I want to provide a moment of time if you needed to do that right now.
I just wanted to say thank you. If any, and now I'm going to say this in Spanish. Si alguien tiene alguna pregunta en español, por favor, hacerla llegar a cualquiera de nosotros, cualquier duda, pregunta, estamos aquí para poder ayudar y poder asistirlos. Así que muchas gracias por su tiempo, espero que hayan disfrutado de esta conversación. Muchas gracias. Thank you, Dr. Martin. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jose. Anya, would you like to say any remarks regarding the question and answers that you may have received directly?
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be part of this and provide the translation services. I did not receive any questions, but in Polish, dziękujemy bardzo za to, że tutaj mogliśmy być. Jeżeli ktokolwiek ma jakieś pytania, proszę do mnie, proszę wysłać do mnie, także żeby mogła przetłumaczyć. Jeszcze raz dziękujemy bardzo. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Back to you, Dr. Martin.
Very welcome. Thank you so much, Jose and Anya. We're so grateful for your participation. And so I'd like to welcome back Mike and anyone from the state of Illinois who would like to make final remarks. Once again, we really appreciate everyone for being on this call and sharing space with us. Please continue to follow the study. Please continue to always ask questions. And thank you so much. Welcome, Mike, and thank you, everyone.
Hey, Lauren and Cody, any last remarks from state of Illinois?
Sure. Thank you, Mike. Just to everybody, I would say, number one, thank you for your participation today. And number two, stay plugged in. Really, we're looking when we get to the results and the recommendations of the study, we'll certainly be turning to all of you and that participated today and looking for your engagement and ownership as together we take these recommendations and try to build a more resilient coast. So stay plugged in. Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. So yeah, I'd like to reiterate that, we really appreciate your help with this, and thanks for joining us today. Stay tuned and stay plugged in. We would like to look back after we completed the study and say we had really robust and a vital interest and participation from the public in this study. So we have a really good first step today. We appreciate it, and that really represents the conclusion of our presentation today. We'll stick around for a couple more minutes in case anybody has a question or anything, but you can consider it concluded. Thank you for participating and feel free to sign off.